to this Greater Call podcast, episode 21, A Female Touch. And I'm so glad you would join us. And I'm extra glad that a woman who is like a big sister to me and certainly a guiding light. And I find myself more and more surrounded by strong women. And Dottie, I could think of no one better to speak about strong feminine heroes of the faith than you. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for pushing me into this. I wouldn't say uncomfortable, but it made me dive. And that was pretty cool.
Well, that's the thing. I've said in just about every show we've done with a plethora of guests that this I'm doing for people to introduce these stories from the Bible that are like movies. They should be movies, really, because there's success and failure and triumph and disaster and all sort of stuff. And it's just great. I just want to direct people to the Bible because these stories are incredible. And these people are just like you and me. I mean, they are folks that are kind of nobodies, really, that became somebodies because they were on a greater call.
That's right.
Okay, I want to say this and then we can dive in.
Okay.
As always, folks, thank you for downloading this. Do follow us on socials. The handles are at The Greater Call. You can watch this and see Dottie's cute presence on YouTube as well, if you so desire. Okay, let's dive in. A female touch. We're going to speak about three women, female heroes that Dottie chose. And it is Mary, the mother of Jesus, the woman at the well, who we still don't know the name for. I'm trying to figure out a name. We might get to that. And then, of course, Mary Magdalene. And before we go there, Dot, I want to make a quick statement, and then I want to read you an argument and then let you respond, because you had the most incredible interaction in late in 2025 with someone. Heroes of the faith are figures throughout history who demonstrated extraordinary trust and obedience to God, oftentimes in the face of immense adversity. And all the heroes we've done so far have been men. But here's my argument. The more I studied these three women, and then it led me to others, incidentally, I came to the realization, and perhaps even understanding, that the women in the Bible, these three women especially, are as strong and as resilient and as brave as any of the male heroes we've highlighted on the show already. And I'm not saying that flippantly because I've got you here, or this is the first show about women. I am, like last night, we were driving to dinner, my wife and I, Tracy, who's a strong woman. And after I'd been researching and talking with you on the phone, I said to her, do you realize that Mary, the mother of Jesus, traveled 70 miles on a donkey, heavily pregnant, to give birth? And I'm like, gosh, if you ever want strong and resilient and brave and courageous and long suffering, there you are. So share your anecdote so we can kick this thing off, please.
Yeah. So my anecdote was at a dinner with friends in their home in the Adirondacks in, I guess, must have been late November. And somehow my husband, who is, I would say, I mean, he's historian, archivist, brain on fire all the time, but also I would say confidently a kind of a part-time Bible scholar about the stories and the history of the Bible, because it is so undeniably, at least in our minds anyway, it's true. It's the real deal. And the more you dig, the more I think you find truth, and you find the resilience and all of those characteristics that you were talking about. But our friend said, well, that Christianity thing, I'm not so sure, because it doesn't seem like Christianity thinks very highly of women. And I had never even thought about it. Not that I realized like, and she's a curious cat. So I thought, well, why would somebody think that? And David and I got talking about it. And his take was that there's often a misconception because of part of the time of the Greco-Roman rule of the occupation of Israel, of the Jewish people, that maybe women are just not appreciated and valued because of the religious traditions and the governmental situation around them at that time. They were considered untrustworthy, uneducated, kind of second class. And there were a lot of restrictions. You couldn't hold public office. You really weren't supposed to be holding property, have political views, all of that sort of second class restriction. When in fact, the more you dig through the Old and the New Testaments, you find out, my gosh, there are pillars of strength in their women. And you go back even before the time of Christ, there were 4 women mentioned in the Old Testament that were in the genealogy of Jesus, that without them, the chain would have been broken.
Mhm.
And they were, you talk about those, it was a Casting Crowns song. I'm just nobody trying to tell everybody. And they were arguably nobodies who knew they had to continue to tell the story so that the promise would happen.
Yeah.
And you think about Rahab, who was a spy and a prostitute,
Mhm.
Ruth, who was a Moabite, she was an enemy of the Israelites.
Yeah.
Bathsheba, David's lover,
Mhm.
and Tamar, who posed as a prostitute with her father-in-law to keep the line alive, and ended up having twins with great trauma, having these 2 boys that continued the line. So even before we get to the 3 people we're going to talk about, the pavers had been laid for strong women to be necessary for this promise to be kept.
Yes, and you stir something inside of me, and again, the mission of the show is to introduce people to people in the Bible.
Yeah.
But it's not just a male thing, and I feel somewhat guilty that we haven't done this yet. I should have done this show and many more a long time ago, because Jesus, the ultimate leader, who we will eventually get to,
Mm-hmm.
I think it will be at the end of all of this, whenever that is. It's amazing how so many women played pivotal roles in
Mm-hmm.
his ministry as well. So I'm saying this to you men out there. It's easy to sort of look down upon, but you shouldn't, because the ultimate leader was surrounded by women from different races, different creeds, different
Correct.
beliefs, and he counted on every single one of them. And these 3 women we're going to dive into, in their own way, they all had different characteristics, but I think there's a common thread between all of them. And this is the thread I want to read to you. Folks, just a backstory quick. Dottie and we had a quick catch up yesterday. And when she picked up the phone, I read her a Bible verse, and she cackled like she normally does. She laughs, and it's infectious. That one over there. And she goes, "Would you give me my brain back?" Because she had been pondering the same verse. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a verse from Proverbs. And incidentally, for those of you who don't know, a large portion of Proverbs was written by King Solomon, who was known as the wisest man to ever live.
Right.
So one of the wisest men had written various things in Proverbs about women. And here's one. It's Proverbs 31:25. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. Now, I want to unpack that a little bit, Dot, before we go ahead. I've always read that and sort of said, oh, yeah, cool, that's my wife, And then when I spent time on each words, the first one that's listed is strength, where, especially as you highlight, in those times, women were sort of kept to the background. They were second-class citizens.
Right.
Dignity, isn't that something we're all striving for? If you're a leader or a coach or a mentor or whatever it is, dignity is it defines who you are. And then this one, she can laugh at the days to come. And I find that one fascinating, because all of us, if we were honest with ourselves, are all a little apprehensive of what the future may hold. But yes, the woman who is strong, she's dignified, and she's not worried about the future. Do you have anything to comment there?
It's funny you say that, because because we travel so much, I'm not always able to go to church at home, but I go to Grace Fellowship in Latham, New York.
Yeah.
And the pastor there, Rex Keener, last weekend, he's finishing up an 11-week series on Acts. when things get a little rough. Things start out well, and then things get pretty rough and tumble. But he brought up a really cool thing, I thought, that you listed those, like an ingredients list if you're going to read a package on food.
Yeah, okay.
And part of his lesson last week was that they go in order of importance, where the biggest one is. So, what's your list?
Strength.
Strength,
Mhm.
dignity,
Yeah.
laughter, perspective.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, God, I never thought about it that way either. That things are ordered in the Bible in priority. And I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah.
And if you
Well,
take that to Proverbs, then that's exactly what we're talking about today.
well, quickly about the personalities of these three ladies, and then we'll dive
Hmm.
in. Mary, the mother of Jesus, and this is the order we'll go in, folks. So don't forward, don't skip, don't stop. If you want to learn about someone, I'll give you the order here, given we're going to stay in order, as Dottie highlighted about the Bible. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about Mary, the mother, first. Then we're going to talk about the women at the well, and then Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
And Mary, mother of Jesus, was the Lord, essentially the Lord's servant. And something she said was so striking to me. She just goes, "Well, if that's the way it is, let it be done." All right. And that's crazy. She was thoughtful. She was maternal throughout her life.
Hmm.
Obviously, she was full of faith and trust. There was a moment when Jesus performed his first miracle, turning water into wine at
Boom.
the wedding. And she didn't know, yes, she knew her son was special, but she hadn't seen him
Mm.
do special things. And then he said to the folks at the wedding, bring those vats of water. And she looked at the disciples and said, do as he says.
Yeah.
Which is something. She was strong. She was courageous. The donkey thing I've highlighted. And then the woman at the well, to me, was inquisitive. She was well versed in scripture and history because she had a deep conversation with Jesus on the encounter.
Arguably his longest conversation
With
in
him.
his 33 years.
Mm.
Yeah.
She was very truthful in her admissions of her wrongdoings
Mhm.
to the Messiah, who had just announced himself. She was bold. She was, you said to me, and we'll talk about this, evangelistic.
Yeah.
And did you know that in Eastern Orthodoxy, she is Saint Photine, which is the enlightened one?
Did not know that.
This is my research. This is what's good about the show because it's making me research, okay? Not just read the Bible or gloss over.
Agreed.
And then Mary Magdalene, she's the patron saint of converts and repentant sinners.
Mhm.
She was a leader amongst the disciples. And we've just done Peter, who is known as the leader and the rock on which the church was built.
Right.
But many accounts and a lot of religious scholars I read about, they're like, to them, Mary was the main one. And she
Mhm.
defined everything. She was called the apostle to the apostles because of her announcement of the resurrection. So let's dive in. To me, the story of Mary is fascinating. Here's a young woman who's encountered by the angel Gabriel. He says to her, do not be afraid. First thing.
Can you imagine? Oh, sure thing. Right. Okay. I'm
Okay,
not allowed to be
let's go.
afraid.
Let's go there because I always try to put myself in these Bible things, right? And when you read this, you're like, read. But if I put myself in this and I'm a teenage girl,
Yeah. Arguably, I mean, if you do the math as they've gone back to, they think she was about 13 years old.
and then you're sleeping there, and some angel shows up, which is mind numbing, and then he proceeds to profess to you that you are going to bear the Son of God. And she's like, but I'm not even married yet, and I've not done what's necessary to have a child.
Correct. I'm engaged, but I've never been with a man. And
And she goes, go ahead.
what the risk is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in that culture, stoned, starved, completely outcast, if that's the case.
If you bear a child out of wedlock, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But still, and this is the first thing about her character that I want to unpack. I'm sure she's considering this once she's calmed her heart rate down for dealing with this being. And then she goes, fine. If the Lord says so, so be it. And that takes incomprehensible faith to me. What say you?
I completely agree, and I also think it's a marvel that, and maybe this is the strength that she shows, or the fact that women were uh, such an important part of this story of the promise, that God or Gabriel didn't go to Joseph first. They went directly to her,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that she could handle it, and then gave him the instructions to do exactly as he would, and to care for her and to honor her, and go through the census, and do all of that happened when their son was born, or as it turns out, frankly, it's his stepson,
Yeah.
and to raise him as his own. But he knew that she could handle it.
Hmm.
And what did she do shortly in the process of all of this? Her cousin Elizabeth had Gabriel visited there too.
Yeah.
And she becomes pregnant at age 60 with a son that would be named John, that would be Jesus' cousin, and essentially become sort of, what did he call him? Like the, I don't know, he kind of sort of paved the way.
Yeah. It was
He
the
called
voice
it,
of
kind of
reason.
the opening act for ultimately the Savior. And I mean, that is phenomenal. And she also traveled, talking about Mary, she traveled to see Elizabeth and Elizabeth's 6 months. This was a war-torn area. This was, I mean, high risk just to get to her cousin for a couple of months and go through this experience together. I mean, where does that strength is kind of supernatural? This is crazy stuff.
Women, this is not for the faint-hearted. Get out there and be
No,
brave. Uh, y- the,
right?
the like, I've always admired you because you're a strong woman, and I've working in a male industry on the PGA tour. And look, you're a Hall of Famer in your own right, but still talking about a men's endeavor is challenging.
Mhm.
And it takes a lot of self-confidence and belief in you going out there every day. And I see a lot of these sort of traits in you. And and to me, I get so jealous. No, that's the wrong word, envious, because you go out there and you make it look so easy. But I
I
need,
know.
yeah, exactly. I need you to admit that it isn't as easy. I mean, looking at the story of Mary, where you're going through all of this stuff, where you're right. Well, Joseph and them both, Joseph, his family tried to convince him not to marry her.
Correct.
And we need to still do it. I hadn't considered Joseph this one. We've done Joseph the other one. Okay.
Yeah, do this one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so, and he sticks by her despite public opinion.
that's right.
And then you observe that she risked her life to bear this child.
She
So,
did.
so I guess where I'm getting to, and this is what I want you to describe, God's calling oftentimes is not for the faint of hearted. And he picks people which you wouldn't think are going to be able to pull this off. They're not the smarts of the industry and stuff like that. It's like you and me out there.
Yeah.
I'm not a PGA Tour golfer. You're an LPGA golfer, but we're working in an environment where perhaps we don't belong,
It's
but we have
it's
respected voices.
it's so true. I think it's sort of like the disclaimer that comes with the stock market, that past performance isn't indicative of future of the possibilities.
Uh
I
huh.
mean, we don't know what God's plans are for us, but it's our job to be open to them. And thank goodness they were, right?
Yeah. No kidding. No
Yeah.
kidding. It's what does Kyle Jackson always say to me on the? I think it was the very first podcast we did. He said, God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the called." And
Bingo.
and the qualifications to me, as you look at this thing, because we're about life and leadership and legacy on the show. No, it's less
Mhm.
stuff where a lot of this courage and bravery and these sorts of things that are requisite when you look at any great leader, where they are like I'm watching Mary, a young girl, learning this stuff on the job and having to take a step out of the uncomfortable into the uncomfortable. And then she started to display all these things that she had within that she might not have known.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I have this um, common denominator of music, and there's the song "Mary, Did You Know"
Yes. Uh-huh.
that came out in, I think it was '84, and it wasn't till 7 years later that the lyrics got matched to the music.
Yeah.
that's 7. We can do an entire podcast on the value of in the historic meaning of 7 throughout the Bible. But I remember hearing that for the very first time, Christmas Eve church in Jupiter, Florida, at Jupiter First, and Barry Johnson was the pastor. And that one hit me. It was like, I believe she knew. She may not have known all of the details,
Yes.
but she knew something was different and something was special, and she had a special mission.
Yeah, no kidding. And she was true to that mission throughout. So then she gives birth to the savior of the world, the king
Yeah,
of the world, in a cave, stable, whatever.
essentially, yeah.
It was hardly, palatial and comfortable. It was in the winter, so it was cold. But anyway, here we are. And then Jesus begins to grow up. And then she has a very maternal moment that's documented in the Bible where they've gone to the temple in Jerusalem and Jesus disappears.
Yeah.
And then they lose him, essentially.
For a couple days.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine losing my child in Publix, let alone being responsible for this child, right? And then you lose him. And then when he comes, he eventually shows up back again. She's like, "Where were you? Gosh, you had us in fits." And he was like,
And what did he say to her?
"Like, don't worry, woman. It's like it's."
I was just doing God's work.
Yeah,
it's no big deal.
If one of my kids had to say that to me, I wouldn't know how to respond to them.
Exactly.
I don't think she did anyway. But so she had this maternal instinct about her. And that's the one thing I admire from all women, naturally, because of the bond with children. But then also, women in industry, women in leadership positions, because it's like our first leadership role for fathers, for mothers, for mentors, for step parents and stuff, is the development of these young children. And here's Mary trying to tell her, the king of the world, to say, you need to straighten up and fly right, my boy. You can't be just disappearing like this without telling us.
That's right. Well, and even at the wedding at Cana, I don't think it's from those things that I've read, Jesus took too kindly to his mother, saying, they're running out of wine. It's like, well, that's not our problem. Exactly. Don't be the overbearing guest. And he comes around to say, okay, take those containers, and as the Bible says, it ended up being the best of the wine that they saved for later in the festival of that wedding. And that's not usually the way it works. Well, you can take a lot from that too, that there's a lot of this stuff that just now is working the way it didn't used to work.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, I'm going to make this point and I want you to comment at the risk of tickling your emotions. So at the darkest hour, so Jesus lives his life and he's sentenced to death, murdered essentially. And Mary is there at the foot of the cross, which is the most gruesome way that someone can be put to death.
To one of 3 women that stuck it out for the whole thing.
All the men freaking ran away.
They're out.
No kidding.
Joseph of Arimathea comes back to claim the body, to ask permission to claim the body. But yeah, everybody else left and 3 women hung out.
And you
right to the very end.
And I watched you walk a really close relationship with your dear friend Kim. And I saw strength and I saw real friendship, because I know personally it's easy to disappear when things get hard. But I want you to talk about that, because I admired you from afar. I should have said something, but to watch you be like,
you got me.
to do that with your dear friend was something we should all aspire to.
Yeah. Well, I think, we were friends back to middle school days. Mm-hmm. And through sports and through kind of being, the jockettes or whatever, mm-hmm. and being goal setters and higher achievers, and we're going on to college and all that. And then we kind of reunited when I came back to Saratoga Springs in late 2008, 2009, and we met, of all places, at the BJ's superstore, grocery store, whatever, the all in one store, in the dog aisle. Imagine that. And she said, "Where are you living?" And I said, "Webster Street." And she said, "Oh my gosh, you live right around the corner." We ended up, it's a 5-minute walk to her house. And from then on, we were like back to being just inseparable. But it was her cancer journey that was, to me, while it was very dark, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
it was so full of hope because I knew where she was going.
Yeah.
And she was a fighter. And, she just never backed down. She through the whole thing, but it was because she had a great faith that the darkness seemed way lighter.
Yeah, it's I'll give you a moment. And sorry,
You're such a turkey.
I sprung that one on you. I will say this, folks. Watching Dottie minister to her friend during that time was refreshing, and it gave me a real picture of what real friendship is like.
Yeah.
And then I watched Mary at the foot of the cross, and I couldn't begin to fathom what that was like. Yet she was there,
Right.
and she didn't say anything. She never said anything, if I'm reading my Bible correctly. Jesus
I
spoke
don't
to
believe
John
so.
next door to her and said,
Just said to John to take care of my mother.
exactly. And
Yes.
and so it wasn't, she was just there. And sometimes the best leadership or life lessons for us all is just to be there at times. You don't have to come
Gosh.
with the right words to say.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about the kids that are learning under us at CBS. I mean, we've been so lucky with some of our production assistants and interns and all of that, that sometimes it is best to say nothing and just do right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, let's move along.
Mm.
The women at the well.
You got anything else big for me?
No, that was it.
That was it. Thank you.
And folks, trust me, when I get to the Masters in 2026, I'm probably going to get a clip around my ear from Dorothy because I jumped this one on it. Because
Probably.
if there's anyone who's thoroughly prepared for every scenario, it's Dottie Pepper, and there's a lesson in that too.
Yeah, you got me there.
Yeah, I did.
Oh
Well,
gosh.
I'm actually quite proud of myself, but I'm fearing the future.
Mm.
As we look at these themes of virtue and character and faith and diligence and
Yeah.
strength, kindness, all these things that these women are showing, then you get the women at the well, who's not named. And
Yeah.
Jesus makes a special trip out of his way to Samaria, which was, again, Jews don't go there.
You don't go there and you don't mix. Absolutely.
She's had various husbands. She's living with a lover. She's just hardly the most upright woman in the world. She's
Right.
such an outcast that she has to go and get water in the heat of the day in relation
Yeah.
to the husband. They go in the cool. Jesus knew this. He just happens to show up on time. Yeah.
At Jacob's well. Yeah.
Well, yes. There's a story to that too, because
That too.
in my show with Wesley Bryan, we talked about Jacob and his wells.
Mm.
And I kept on thinking of the living water. And so Jesus, he says, "I'm thirsty." She goes, "Well, how are you going to get water?" And then he reveals to her that he is the Messiah. She debates him on this.
For the first time, because so leading up to that, he really hadn't told people to tell others that, or hadn't really been saying, "I am the great I am."
Yeah.
I am the Messiah. So yeah, this was a turning point in his ministry. And to think of it as a woman with a checkered past, a checkered present, who thought very little of herself and went to the well midday so she wouldn't have to be around the other women that were going for water.
Yeah.
And she runs into this guy that she thought, well, he knows an awful lot about me. He must be a prophet. And then when he starts really going into her past, oh no, this is bigger than that.
How do you know so much about
me? How do you know so much about me? Yeah.
That to me is so liberating, to know that there's the Savior that knows who I am. And even though he knows my past, he will still pick me, or you, whoever watching or whoever listening to this. Yeah, anybody. And then I can imagine when she comes to the realization that this is the person she's been waiting for, that she runs back to, because remember, she's the outcast, huh? And Jesus has picked her to go and evangelize to people that have ostracized her. So what's
Correct. And think about, he ostracized his disciples because they, when they came back from getting lunch to where they were, what are you doing talking
exactly?
to a Samaritan, let alone a woman
Hmm.
from Samaria? They were considered racially inferior.
Yeah.
And he said, "Excuse me, are you going to look down on someone just because somebody else from that region was not nice to you? That's why you're going to diss her? Come on, we got a little work to do here."
There's so many. I mean, we could talk about this forever because there's so many life lessons in all of this,
Yeah,
and they're all freaking uncomfortable. So anyway, so she goes running off down the hill. She leaves her water pail behind or whatever it is, and she goes and says to everybody, "You need to come and see this guy. He told me about me."
yeah,
And here's the thing, Dottie, and I want your take on this. Remembering that they were like, "You are not our type. You,
mm-mm.
we are, we basically kicked you out because of how you behaved." She does it with such energy, excitement. I don't know, whatever she's exuberant, right? That
Yeah,
they all follow her back. So
they
think
did.
about the message she was carrying and how she carried it. And there's a lesson to me in this, that how you deliver news is so important because she did it so well. She evangelized, or she introduced the entire community, the entire town. They all left to
Yeah,
come and see this Jesus guy.
right. She did it with such grace.
Mhm.
He had, I think you hear the Zach Williams song. There's a lyric in there that says he turned my mess into a message.
Yes.
I mean, you can definitely take that about the woman at the well, who again by nearly every account, has no name.
Yeah.
And you can also think of it that Christ showed her who he was, and he didn't need to know her name.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I think that's remarkable. And she took all of that, and many people believe she became really like the first missionary
Yes.
because she went back and brought everyone to him to the extent that he stayed an extra couple of days in Samaria.
And you know
Pretty
what's
crazy stuff.
yeah, you know it's curious too because we've done a show on Philip, and Philip was known as like the missionary to the Gentiles,
Hmm.
but she actually is the first, if you really think about this, because
And think about the book too. When we talk about Luke, I mean, it was written by a Gentile. The
yeah,
only book in the New Testament written by a Gentile, doctor, educated. Um, so there's so many ties that are. You talk about inclusiveness. It's to me is like one of the greatest examples of it.
and here's the thing too. This has just occurred to me because I keep on thinking that men are watching and listening to this, and I've learned a lot, so I'm certain that they will too. But for women, um, how Jesus picked this woman, this no-name woman, to do this very important job.
Mhm.
And again, she wasn't the most upright of uprights. Not that all of we are, but there's a lesson in that too to say, sometimes when you have that moment and you've got to go and deliver a message, you just got to suck it up and do it because that's what life is. That's what leadership is.
Yeah.
That's what leaving a legacy. Think of the legacy this woman's left, and we don't know her name.
Well, she sowed seeds that still today are alive.
Yeah.
If she hadn't realized who the great I am was, again, does it all? I don't think it falls apart, but it certainly doesn't have the legacy and trajectory that it does in that part of the world. And then as we know, it exploded from there.
Mm, so cool. Moving right along. Mary
Mm,
Magdalene. I would call her like fiercely loyal and devoted. Her first encounter with Jesus, she's obviously a woman of means, and she was
yes.
tormented by year number seven demons, and he healed.
Hmm.
And she had this moment where she was like, "This is the guy. I'm following him," and she became a
Yeah.
part of the way, as they were all known, the followers of Jesus, the
Right.
disciples. Um, the thing I want to point out about her, well, I know you want to talk about her. She was there, and she was the apostle to the apostles after
Hmm.
death and the resurrection. The thing I want to point out, though, is that once she had this transformation, she never looked back.
Mm.
At least that's what I'm reading about all
Yeah,
the encounters with him. Yet all of us, we want advancement and we want to get somewhere. And then when we get to that place, we're wondering if, what if? You know, the
yeah,
Israelites had the same thing when they were led out of Egypt by Moses. They were like,
for
take us
sure.
back. This is uncomfortable.
Hey, yeah, wait, this isn't what we were thinking this was going to be,
Mm.
right?
But here's Mary, because, and here's the thing too about these disciples and Jesus and such, they were very popular initially, and then they began to get into like real pickle with all the authorities of the day.
That's right.
Was devoted to a fault. You know, it was all about Jesus, and there was never any looking back. And I feel like there's a lot to be
Mm.
learned from that.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in that way, but you're definitely correct. And she was one of those who truly never looked back.
Yeah.
Uh, not even through the end of his life. And isn't it fitting that she was the one that got to first proclaim the resurrection when they, were terrified? The women that went to, they're not allowed to embalm, to put spices on the body on the Sabbath, so they wait until sunrise
Yeah.
the next morning and go there, and they're terrified because the rocks rolled away. They didn't go in. They went back to find a couple of the apostles to say, hey guys, we need a little help here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they realized that the body was gone. But it was to Mary Magdalene that the two angels appeared, and then Jesus saying, you know, it really is me. I'm not the gardener that you think I am. You're confused a little bit right here. I'm back,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to go tell everybody else that I'm only going to be here for a bit longer, but you are the one that I'm entrusting you to go do this. And I think too, the story is he never gives us too much that we can't handle it.
True. I'll
Yeah.
say this. I'll say this on the back of that. As you share that very honest and truthful take there, I believe this was her reward for the devotion she showed Jesus.
Yeah.
Because remembering that this is Jesus and he's the creator of the world. So he's gonna this thing's gonna work out his way, however it goes, right?
Yeah.
And I can
Yeah.
imagine the sense of humor going, well, I'm gonna rise from the dead, and I'm then gonna appear to make Mary and her two friends show up, you know.
Yeah.
And when they come there, I'm just going to play a little trick on her and make her think she's the gardener for a little while until I say her name.
Right.
I mean, like, so the sense of humor to me is fun. But
Yeah.
this was
Agreed.
a reward, getting to see him first, because she's
Yeah.
the darkest of days on Friday. Now on Sunday
Yeah.
morning, it's the brightest of times. And through all of the ups and downs and ins and outs and stuff, she was by his side all the time. She funded his
Yeah.
ministry. She was all in. It wasn't
Yeah.
just words; she was putting money behind it as well.
Right. And
And
that was one of those things that wasn't necessarily in the Greco-Roman world on the approval list either.
no. Mm-mm. So
No, even by going back to the tomb, they were risking being stoned.
yeah,
I mean, it would. I mean, the king had said, that's out. So just even going back in their faithfulness, in their loyalty to the promise, to him, they risked themselves again.
mm. I think for any aspirant leader, there's a lesson in this, and I'm sort of wrapping a little bit here, and I'm going to let you have the final take.
Mm.
When I
Oops.
first met Dottie, look, Dottie is tough. You don't become a world class golfer if you don't have a spine about you. But I watched you. I'd watched you playing golf when I was a kid on TV, with a visor and the baggy pants and stuff. And fashion's gotten way better. Um, the
That's
and
funny.
and I was like, I can
Mm.
learn from this woman.
Mm.
And so one day we were out rickying a golf course, and I said, Dottie, I'm just your wingman, and that sort of stuck. All of the crew
Uh-huh.
know me as Dottie's wingman,
Wingman.
and I'm sharing this to not say I've got it all together, but I'm going to say to you, aspirant leaders, or if you want to get somewhere, mentorship is great, but
Yeah.
devotion to that mentorship is good. And this hadn't occurred to me. This happened when you were talking to me now about Mary Magdalene, that she had this incredible moment where she was the first one to see Jesus and proclaim his resurrection. She became
Right.
the apostle to the apostles. And remember this woman is canonized. The entire Roman Catholic faith believes
Yeah.
she is it
That's right.
because of how devoted she was. So if you wanting to become a leader, find someone you can follow. Be a wingman to someone and be devoted, because that it's the best way to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been blessed by people that, not that they mowed a path for us, but just kind of pointed us in the right direction. And you could come back to ask questions, to observe, to kind of sponge things up on your own. And what a blessing that's been.
Yeah, well,
I had Judy Rankin, I've had Mike Tirico. I mean, there's so many people that when you look back over 20 plus years of doing this, that they were put there for a reason.
yeah, really well.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Yeah.
Hey, and guys watching this, if you need something done, find a woman.
that list in the Bible's long, man. Boy, did they get it done.
I really did. Dottie, what a thrill. Before I let you go, where can folks follow you? Is there a foundation or something they can support? Please share all that stuff.
Oh gosh. Um, we are big Bible Project supporters in this house. David's on a small group there too, and he's been to the conferences. So we're big fans of that. Just getting the word into, I think, digestible form.
Yeah.
That isn't so. I mean, the Message Bible to me is amazing because it's conversational. It's not two columns. It's more as you would normally read a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think God meets you where you are, and that's how I best learn. So I think we're big supporters of that sort of stuff. I'm on Instagram at Dottie_Pepper. I'm on Twitter, same thing. So I know I definitely favor Insta over the X, but yeah, I think part in what you do as well is that we use social media for good, and if we can do that, then things are pretty positive.
Okay, folks, I'm like
Yeah.
her. I'll be her chief of staff as well. She also would love you to support K Love Radio because I know she
Yes,
does.
for sure. For sure.
And all the young artists. It was because of Dottie we got Josh Baldwin on the show, and Josh is opening up,
Yeah,
avenues to getting other guys on there. If you
for
have
sure.
ideas, people, let us know. I'd love to know if you want to have someone join us and talk about a hero. And
Yeah.
then I also just want to say that if you go to a PGA Tour event and you hear what sounds like Scotty, 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 and they're shouting for Scotty Scheffler, it's wrong. They're actually shouting Dottie, and they're shouting for Dottie Pepper because she's a legend. So I'm
Uh,
thankful to know you. I'm thankful to call you a friend and almost a family member, big sister.
yes.
And it's been a true honor to dive into these heroes of the faith with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for pushing. It's great.
And for the rest of you, thanks for downloading this. Thanks for following what we do. Again, the handles on social are at The Greater Call, also available on YouTube. Share this with your friends. Share this with your friends. And as always, go and be a legend.